Welcome back to the Metal Command podcast, everybody. This is Tony here with you. And of course, I'm joined by John Yelland and, of course, Carlos from the band Beholder with a new album, or a debut album, I guess we can call it. Not new, it's going to be new, but it's a debut album called In the Temple of the Tyrant. And of course, this is a record that's receiving a lot of great reviews here. Both of these guys obviously have played in other bands, but this is the debut album of the band, basically. And let's talk about it, man. Probably to start it off, why don't you describe what the band sounds like and how you think the band sounds like, so anybody that's never really heard of you before can definitely get a feel of what your music sounds like.
John?
It is doom metal.
Put him on the spot.
And doom, I was waiting for you to take the lead on that.
I'm gonna feel that one.
But what I'll say is that it's doom metal, which is very much not my normal forte. And so, case in point, when Carlos first approached me and inquiring if I would be interested in joining this project, I was a little bit intimidated, but also pretty excited because I think I'm perhaps most known for my work in Judicator, which is more traditional power metal with prog elements and whatnot. And so it has the vocal approach that you would expect from that kind of music. So Carlos turned me onto a whole bunch of bands to familiarize myself with that are doom metal. And I took it upon myself to make a really distinct change in my voice to the best extent possible to ensure that when people listened to Beholder, they didn't think, oh, this is kind of like Judicator. I wanted people to almost question if they were listening to John Yelland in a sense. So, it's doom metal. Carlos is the one who should be talking about this. Thank you very much.
Real quick. So if anybody is familiar with any of like the heavyweights of classic doom metal, like Candlemass, obviously, Solitude Eternus is a big one. There was another band that didn't always knock it out of the park, but the couple albums that were excellent were very excellent, which is Memento Mori. And I guess there's like probably little hints of other type doom bands, but not so much. The doom can be separated nowadays, especially into a lot of different categories. But back when I was first discovering it back in the 80s, it was basically either you were kind of Sabbathy doom or you were or epic doom. And so Candlemass, Solitude Eternus was more the early 90s, but they really took that Candlemass sound to a different level. But then there were other bands like Trouble, obviously. Of course, people will still throw Black Sabbath in there. And somehow nobody had this on their fucking bingo card, but Pentagram going viral in 2025. No one saw that one coming. But but those bands, they're more the Sabbathy blues kind of oriented, whereas I've always been drawn more towards the epic style, which is kind of firmly rooted more in like traditional metal, but also has a lot of power metal elements to it.
Yeah,
big, like grandiose vocals and like wildly fantastical themes, just all done in a much darker fashion. So for anybody wondering what we might sound like, the first thing I would say is if you've ever heard Candlemass, like old Candlemass or Solitude Eternus, you're about 75% of the way there. And I guess the only thing that I think is just always going to happen, given the nature of the bands that John comes from, that I come from, that we've been performing in for years and years on our own, there's going to be elements of power metal that find their way in. But the goal was to try to shape it in a way that is more true to the doom aesthetic, for lack of a better way of saying it. Not so much that it has to be like profoundly sad and depressing or anything like that, it just has to have, it can't be too happy. Although surprisingly, there are a couple of moments on this album that may not necessarily be happy, but they're definitely a lot. They definitely have a different flavor than what you would expect from doom, and I think that helps to offset the stuff that's darker and heavier even more so, and help it stand out on its own. So you get that
Right.
wild swing from light to dark, and it makes each one, the heavy stuff sounds that much heavier for it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's a really pretty good description of it, because it wasn't quite like a completely 100% doom metal album.
Right.
You had power metal. You kind of have an infusion of both of them.
yeah,
I think.
well, I
is
mean,
what it
John
was.
coming from years of Judicator and Dysphoria, it's the power metal with the prog elements, like he's saying. I've had Shadow Dance since the late '90s, which has always been a very dark, aggressive American style power metal band, but with progressive elements as well. And that also enabled me to start experimenting for my first actual opportunity to start introducing doom metal style elements in, because I've always wanted to have like a straight up doom metal project or band or something since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
So, I'm just lucky. I got this really bizarre group of knuckleheads to actually go along with it.
Speaking of bizarre groups of knuckleheads, how did you guys ended up meeting and forming a band together?
You want me to take that?
I'll speak to my side, and then Carlos maybe finishes up. Yeah, I mean, so I've known Carlos since 2013 or 2014 when he handled the editing and mixing, I believe it was, for Judicator's third album, At the Expense of Humanity. And we were just so impressed with him as a person, his work ethic, and the work that he does, that we continued to have a working relationship with him ever since then. And that working relationship turned into more and more of a friendship. And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely consider Carlos a really good friend, somebody who I like and love. But yeah, so as far as how I got involved, there was a period in 2020 or 2021 or two, whatever it was. Carlos, like I said earlier, approached me asking if I'd be interested. And I'll let Carlos pick it up from here because it's interesting. Myself, a current member of Judicator, Michael Sanchez, a former member of Judicator, has hopped on as Beholder's bassist. And so it's been a really nice opportunity because Michael and I had some old misconceptions or beef that this opportunity allowed us to squash the beef, I guess you could say. And it's been really good to reconnect with Michael. I really like him as a musician and as a person. He has a beautiful soul. And he's a sweet person, and I'm really, really happy and excited to have him on board. And everybody else in the band is just, there are certain relationships that work on a professional level, and that's okay. You don't have to be friends with everybody you work with, but in the times we've hung out and interacted all in person, I've been very impressed and happy with how well we get along with each other.
Yeah, I mean, Christy, the first 5 minutes of all of us piling into your car at the airport and stuff, it was like we were all just shooting the shit and busting each other's balls like we've been friends for a decade, and not just like friends through Facebook or through collaborations, but like actual like hang buddies. So it was a good vibe. It was a good vibe right from the start. And yeah, and it's just like John said, man, it goes back a long ways. I think the person I've been connected with the most or for the longest would actually be Matt, the other guitarist, because he was his other band, well, his main band, but Chaos Frame at the time, he was looking for a singer. And I happened to have a friend that I knew would fit perfect. So I hooked them up, my buddy Dave. And he's been Chaos Frame's singer since back then, like around 2013, 14 or whatever. And then I wound up working on that album that they did. And I guess somehow through my working on that album, I then got asked to work on, when Matt was in another band at the time called Noble Beast, I got asked to work on that album. And then somehow through me working on that album, Judicator's former guitarist and co-founder, Alicia Cordisco, contacted me and expressed interest in me working on a Judicator album. I had vaguely been aware of John up to that point, and I was wrapping up the production on the Noble Beast album. And there was a couple of songs that needed some additional backing vocals. So I contacted John and said, listen, man, I'll get you some cash or whatever. You do some extra backing vocals on these 2 songs, make them all choir-like. John came through, and then like after that was done, there you go. You got a connection between John, Matt, myself. Then I work on the Judicator albums, for a couple of them afterwards. Michael jumps in on Judicator. I don't even know how he wound up joining Judicator, but next thing I know, what was it, The Last Emperor, right? That was when he joined up. And then like John said, you deal with Michael for about 2 minutes and you just can't help but like the guy. He's a great dude and a phenomenal musician. So we hit it off, and it just became like, even when the album was done, we stayed in contact, Michael and I, and we're, constantly, talking about recording stuff and blah, blah, blah. So all of this is to say that at a point where other things were kind of stagnating, I'd had this idea in mind for at least several years. Actually, since the inception of it was during the period of working on The Last Emperor with Judicator. It's when it first kind of found its way into my mind there. But then it took a few more years before I could even make any moves on it. And by the time I was making those moves, I already had in mind who I really hoped would agree to being part of it. And so John reached out when I was working on the Majesty of Decay album. And that was when I hit him back when I was like, yeah, well, I got an idea, and what do you think of this? And he took it in stride. He's like, I don't know what doom metal is, but he didn't let it stop him. He's like, but I'm intrigued. I think that was actually the follow-up response, but I'm intrigued or something. So and we just kind of took it from there. And I always knew, just given John's penchant for theatricality and the range of expression in his voice. I don't mean his range in terms of how high he can sing or whatever, but I mean how easily he can slip into characters. I knew would be just like it would be the perfect fit for this, because this type of doom metal by its very nature is extremely theatrical. So
right.
You want somebody who's ready to throw on a pirate shirt if need be. And John will do it with that much.
Hey, everybody. Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching. And if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video. And if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.